Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing this moody cinematic lighting all inside of Blender. And by the end of the video, we should have a scene built something similar to this. Before we start building a scene from scratch, I want to just quickly explain what we're doing here. We're going to be doing a basic 3-point lighting setup, slightly modified. And the reason we're doing this is because this is very easy to use and transfer over multiple projects. Also, we're going to get into render times and how lighting size can affect that. So let's jump in and we'll build a scene like this. So for this particular tutorial, we're going to be using 3D scans. This is a free open source scan library of some statues. So you can go ahead and jump onto this website and just find yourself a scan that you like to work with in light. After you've done that, we're going to jump into a pretty basic scene right here, and we're just going to set a few things up. So I'm going to go ahead and delete our base character, and then I'm going to delete our base light since we're going to be doing all of our lighting from scratch. One thing we are going to want to do is go from object to world in the node editor, take the background and bring it all the way to black. We can light with HDRIs if we want. However, for this, we're going to be doing all the lighting ourselves, and that's just going to give us maximum control over how we're shaping our object, because really the point of lighting is to shape your object. So let's go ahead, punch Shift A, and then let's add in a sphere. And then we're going to add some subdivisions to the sphere just to make it more detailed. And we're going to left click shade smooth, go to the object data properties of that sphere, go to normals, click auto smooth, and then the 30-degree angle should be good. That's just going to ensure that the sphere is smoothly shaded once we put normals onto it. So let's go and take our camera, pull it into the sphere, and let's add in our first light so we can see our scene. We're going to go Shift A, and we're going to go to light, and let's do a regular area light for now. And then I'm going to add an object constraint to this, and I'm going to do a track to, and I'm going to track to our sphere. And I'm going to go ahead and put our lights under our lights and our sphere under our geometry. Now we're going to drop this light over off to the side. So whenever you're drawing or rendering, this is your classic start scenario, is where you're just working with a base sphere. And the reason we're doing this, we're not jumping right off into a statue, is because I wanted to explain and show you how important your materials and reflections will play a role in your lighting. So we're going to go ahead and call this area light our key light, and this is going to be our light later on in the tutorial. So let's go ahead and keep that light in there. And we're going to just keep this light throughout the full tutorial, so we're already setting stuff up for later on. Let's go ahead and go to our power, and let's just do something like, let's say 40. So one of your first things you're going to really quickly realize about rendering and lighting is your size of your light really affects the shadow right here. And you can see this right here. You can see how that shadow, as the light gets smaller, that terminator sharpens. And we can make this more dramatic by going to our floor. So let's go back to our object. And I'm just going to bring in a floor material that I have previously made, and it's going to be solid black. Let me go ahead and turn off all of this. And even if I were to take the floor away just for now, let's go ahead and just mess with this lighting, and we're going to just see how that terminator gets sharper. And this is the first basic principle of lighting, is your size of the light and distance of the light. So if we were to also move the light further away, affects how your shadow, how harsh or soft your shadow is. So bigger light, softer; smaller light, harsher; also further away, harsher shadow; closer, softer. And that's because the light's wrapping around and kind of filling in that terminator. Now, it's quite obvious to see on this sphere, but once we jump to some more complex objects like our statue we're going to be importing, you're going to really want to keep this in mind, because the whole point of light is to sculpt the object. We're sculpting either our object or our scene with our light. So it's very important that we understand how our tools are working. In this case, these are our lighting tools. All right, let's go and bring that plane back in just for now. And then I'm going to take our camera, and in this case I have a camera track also. I'm just going to bring both of them down a bit just so we can see the floor right there. And then I'm going to bring the sphere down, and I'm going to make it a little smaller. We'll take our track up, and we're going to reposition our camera right there. I just wanted to be able to see the reflection of this because I really like how that looks. Okay, so now that we have our key light, we're going to do something special for our fill light, and this is going to make sense later on. But we're going to do Shift A, and then we're going to actually add in a mesh. So we're going to go to mesh, and we're going to do cylinder. We're going to make the cylinder very, very thin, and I'll explain why. So go to the radius and make it 0.005. let's go ahead and bring that that cylinder up. And what I want to do is go ahead and add in a emission material. We're going to go to emission, drop our emission onto surface. And now we're just going to crank that strength up. Let's bring this down real quick. So you can see we have basically a beam of light. This is going to be great for our reflections, and I'll show you why. So just pay attention to the floor right now, not the sphere. We're going to go to our rotation and rotate it on the y-axis by 90 degrees. Now we're going to take this light down and pull it back. And you can see how the reflection on this surface changed based on the orientation of our light. So what we're going to do is put this over this light right here, this circle, and we're going to call this cylinder fill. And in this case, we're going to designate it top. So this is our fill top. Let's put that under our lights so we don't get confused with our other geometry. Now what we can do is we're going to go to our circle and we're going to just create a material. So let's go click new material and let's drop in a base color. We're going to make that base color black and we're going to go to roughness and take that down. Now we can see that light reflected in the roughness. I'm going to go ahead and add some imperfections and color to the sphere. That way we can just get a little bit more detail out of it. By the way, guys, if you're interested in any of the project files, you can check out our Patreon down below, where I already have this whole scene set up with the statue. So feel free to go grab that if you want. Let's go ahead and let's drag this light down now, and we can really see how this light is starting to show on the surface. That's looking great. We're going to take our key light, pull it this way a little bit, and now watch as we affect the size of our key light, how that reflection right there is changing. And you know, this would be more dramatic if we had basically, for example, if we just made this really black. So we'll take that color out. You can even see it better there. The darker your material, the more that these little reflections are going to show, especially if your roughness is all the way down. So we're going to go back to our main object. You can see how we're in a dark room right now, and this is a great example of how light shapes. So we're really just shaping this object with light. So finally, it's time to add in our third light. So we're going to punch Shift A. We're going to click on light, and then we're going to go for another area light. Let's just go ahead and bring that back. And then like the other light, we're going to go to the add object constraints. We're going to track to, and let's go ahead and track to this sphere right here. Awesome. And you can see that light's really coming up in this back reflection now. And even this right here is looking very, very interesting. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this light back a little bit and we're going to scale it down. And then we're going to scale it wider. And what we're really trying to do here is create this little rim around the light. And you can ignore our floor just for now. I'm going to turn that off. Really, like I said, just trying to shape this object. So now that we have this basic lighting scenario set up, what I want to start doing is I want to bring in some actual geometry other than a sphere. So we're going to be doing that statue in the thumbnail, and we're going to start messing around with that, playing around with the materials, playing around with the texture, and also messing around with the lighting just to see what we're looking for. What details do we want to bring out? What do we want to push into the shadows? So our statue is imported, and I'm just going to go ahead and just for now, I'm going to turn off our sphere because we're not going to need it. And I'm going to turn our plane back on. So like I said, we just import the statue real quick. This is just a quick tip on modeling and importing scans. You can tell that the origin of this object is not correct. So we're going to go to Object, Set Origin, Origin to Geometry. There we go. It snapped to the geometry just like that. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this or scale it down. And then we're going to rotate it. Let's bring it to the floor for now. And that's looking pretty good right there. We'll do something like this just for now. So now that we have our sphere out of the scene, I want to track to something different. And one of the main things that is bothering me is this area light. Let's go and take this up. And we just need to make sure to call this our rim light. So all of these lights are serving different purposes, and the purposes they serve depend on the material we create. So for this material right here, I'm going to make a new one, I'm just going to keep the default name. We're gonna go to our base color right here and we're gonna make it black. Let's go ahead and take out our rim light and our top fill light. That way we're just left with our key. So let's put the key, scale it down. I'm gonna move it over to the left, just in a spot where we can start getting a little bit of highlights. So like a really dark studio lighting like this, we're really emphasizing the edges of the object and the creases of the object. So to kind of make them pop a little bit more, let's go to the light settings. We're at 40 watts, we'll go up to 100 watts. And 100 wasn't quite enough, so let's go up to maybe 500. There we go. So now we're getting all those little sharp reflections and bounces. Another thing is, keep in mind your base color is greatly going to affect how much light reflection you get inside of here. So this is kind of like your global illumination. You know, darker the base color, the more punchy it's going to be, because the highlights are going to be the same brightness, but all of those little reflections and bounces are going to be quite different. You know, I've talked about base color before. Technically, pure black doesn't exist, so you go a little bit higher if you want to go for that realism. It's going to also help fill in a little bit of what's going on. So we have this metallic right here, and I'm going to slide that all the way up, and you can get these very, very interesting hits and highlights. Another thing you can do is take our specular all the way up, and then we can start messing around with our roughness. You can see the rougher it is, kind of like the smoother the lighting is, it kind of starts wrapping and curving around. We could take our roughness all the way down to 0, and it's kind of just this hard to see shiny surface. So this is not a materials tutorial, but what I would recommend doing is playing around with your base color, playing around with your roughness map, and also playing around with your normal. Another thing we should do is shade smooth, and then we should also go into our object data properties and just click auto smooth on the normals. That way we don't get any issues. So I just applied the material I built earlier for the scene. It's very simple. We just have a basic marble, just base image texture just for the diffuse. And then we have a roughness texture, and then we have another roughness texture that's driving the bump, and it's set very, very low. And also the metallic and specular is turned all the way up on that. You can kind of see what we're left with right here. This very interesting kind of corroded metal material. So now that we have our material applied and we're happy with where we're at. Oh yeah, by the way, don't forget, make sure to punch Tab, U, and then Q project, or just make sure you're in edit mode and you Q project. That way that these textures apply correctly, because there's no projection, no UVs when you import this object. Now what we're gonna do is bring in that fill top right here. And the reason we made it this thin little beam, this thin little line, is I'm gonna turn off our key right here, is because this thin line starts to show up in the object. So it kind of hits right there. It's hitting some highlights. If we were to scale this wider like that, it starts lighting everything up. Of course it's too bright, but if let's say the brightness was maintained, it would just be a flat light lighting everything. We don't want that. We want a very thin, small beam of light that's kind of just catching these very small spots and letting everything else fall into shadow. Because remember, the purpose of this is a dark room, that's a dark studio room that we're really just emphasizing all the edges, which is going to make this dramatic shape. So you can see even our key light right here is doing a pretty good job of hiding most of that. I'm just going to bring it back a little bit, and then also down, and maybe to the side a little bit. I'm liking how that's looking right there. So we could go to this bar right here, and let's take it over. Just try to find a spot where we like how everything's being kind of called out. I think right above is the best. And then now we can take it up some, and that's just gonna make it a little softer, or not softer, it's gonna make it a little harder actually, but it's gonna bring the light levels a little lower. So we have our key, we have our fill, and now it's time to add in our rim light. Remember from the circle, we just dropped it behind here. So this one's gonna be a little difficult. It's gonna give us a little bit of trouble. Let's go ahead and take this track 2 off now that we're gonna position this exactly how we want it. And let's go ahead and reorient that light. Now that we've reoriented the light facing towards the panther right here, what we're gonna do is, another thing I like to do is change the color of the lights, not just for, you know, cool effect. We're actually doing it in this particular situation right now. We're just gonna make it red, And that's so we can actually see what this light's contributing to the scene. And we could also just turn off these other two lights and just work on, hey, what is this light adding to the scene and what am I really making more visible here? And another thing is, if you want to avoid this reflection right here, we're going to take our camera and we're going to bring it down a bit, which is going to change the angle of this. And we're going to take this camera track right here and we're going to bring it up some, just like that. So you have to remember, reflections happen when you have your light in the scene and your camera in the scene. And when you can see that light, it's going to, essentially what's happening is your path tracer is firing photons from the camera, virtual photons, and they're going to hit, bounce, and then hit that light, and that's going to create that hot spot. Luckily, this hot spot is now out of view because of our angle change, our angle of incidence on the surface changed. Therefore, we no longer see that reflection. All right, let's go ahead and take this light up a little bit more. And I'm liking, and by the way, if we take this light down more, it's going to change the angle of incidence back towards the camera. So what I want to do is I just want to create some harsh outlines right here. I'm really liking that. Right now we're only at 10 watts. Let's do something like 60. And I think we can just keep going. I'm just going to slide it up. And even that right there looks pretty cool. So let's look at our key light real quick. Okay, our key light is hitting an outline here and here. And then we're going to do our fill top. So fill top, key, and rim light. And you can see we're getting these really dramatic colors and effects already off the bat. And we can also change how this light is facing. So right now we're facing forward. We can point it down a little bit. Something like that looks pretty good. Let's bring it to the left some. I really want to wrap it more around here. And let's make this a different kind of tone. So I'm going to go a little warmer with this light. And I really like that right there. Another thing I'm going to do is I can also add in some flags. So that's another thing that we need to talk about. Not only can you create light, but you can also stop light in your scene from going somewhere. And that's just easy. We're going to add in a Shift A. We're going to make a mesh. Let's just do a plane. Let's go ahead and rotate that. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees in the Y. Let's pull it up right here. And for this to be a proper flag, we're going to make a new material. And let's just do, in fact, it doesn't even need to be principal. Let's just do Shift A, search. We're going to search a diffuse material right here. We're going to drop that onto the surface, drop that down to black, turn the roughness all the way up, and this should serve as a flag. Traditionally, flagging in filmmaking and photography is something, for example, you could take this piece of paper, something between your talent and the light that's kind of blocking it right here. This piece of paper is not the best example because it also is translucent, so it's just kind of softening the light. But in traditional sense, you would have a solid black piece of tarp, or in the sense of filmmaking, they call it flagging. And we can do that also in the virtual world. Just because we have, virtual scene doesn't mean we can't do the same things that you do in real life. Okay. So yeah, I really wanted to cut some of that down right there just because I thought it was a little distracting, especially on the edge of our composition, is adding a lot of attention to a piece that honestly doesn't really matter for what we're trying to do here, which is kind of light up the face right here. So we have our flag. Let's go to our flag settings so we can make it invisible. Make sure it's black, by the way, and we don't have to make it invisible anymore. But just keep in mind, if it's white, it's going to serve as a bounce board. And I can show you what that does also. So we're going to do Shift A, mesh plane, and we're going to bring this up right here. And we'll just have it replace our actual surface. New material, and look at that. If we make it white, then it's going to fill in all of that right there. And that's serving as a bounce, but it's in shot, so it would be a practical. So just like that, we can create some really simple cinematic lighting. Guys, remember the purpose of doing this is you want to be intentional with your lighting. Especially in these dark room, dark studio scenarios, you really want to shape how the light is kind of coming around the object. And especially like the reason we're using a statue is because this is a very intricate, there's a lot of curves and a lot of bends, and it's up to you as the artist to decide how those are going to be amplified and shown off. So guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed the video. Remember, you can check out our Patreon where we'll be putting the project files. We launch a new video there every week, so you can go ahead and check out this week's video as well. Again, guys, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day, and peace out.